At 60 years old, I got my first job as an airline pilot. I'll tell you all about it. Yes, it's true. At 60 years old, I got hired by the airlines, and I actually went to one of them for a short period of time. How did I get there? It's a long story, and I'm going to kind of delve into that. Started off with basically having an interest in flying as a kid. Started taking some flight lessons right after I got out of college, but life got in the way, and I basically continued to work as an electrical engineer and working as a design engineer and a marketing manager and a business development manager. And I did that basically for 40 years. And then one day I decided I had enough of that and called it quits. But prior to that, I had spent several years working toward various pilot's license. I actually got my private pilot's license at 49 years old. And then about 5 or 6 years later, I got my instrument. And then about every year after that, I was earning a different rating, a commercial, a CFI, a CFII, multi-engine, and basically stopped at that point. And I also started to do a little bit of flight instruction on the side when I had spare opportunities on the weekends or in the evenings. Anyways, when I decided to leave my career of 40 years, I went on full-time as a flight instructor, and I wound up flying a lot more, and I flew a lot. And with the results of the pandemic that came out and a shortage in the pilot industry when the pandemic was basically petering out, airlines were looking for anybody and everybody. So at that time, I was fairly close to having the minimum 1,500 hours. And I decided I'll kind of take it up a notch and fly harder, fly more often, including in my own Super Cub, where I put a lot of hours in that plane in the final months leading up to taking an offer with one of the airlines. So in regards to offers, first of all, I applied to Part 121 regional airlines, and I also applied to Part 135 charter operations, numerous ones. In the end, I interviewed with 3 different airlines, SkyWest, Air Wisconsin, and GoJet Airlines, and I received offers from all 3 of those companies. With the Part 135 operations, I did not receive offers. Some of them have almost more stringent requirements in terms of the hours that they want, particularly the multi-engine time. With the airlines, they're happy with you having 25 hours of multi-engine time because they're going to put you on their simulators as part of their ATP training to get you to the magic 50 number that you need to get your restricted ATP, which was in my case. The companies like NetJet and others, they wanted 50 hours of multi-engine, and I just didn't see spending another 25 hours times $500 or $600 an hour building that time when I could go to the airlines. So in the end, I chose to go to GoJet Airlines for a number of reasons. They were flying CRJ 550s, which were looking like pretty cool planes. They were affiliated with United, and also where they had bases out of, it was very likely that I would be somewhere in the Northeast, which was good for my travel reasons, for commuting reasons. So I decided to accept their offer and waited for the start date, which took a couple months. And so with that offer in hand and finally a start date, I wound up going to ATP Jet Center in Irving, Texas to take the ATP CTP exam and course, basically toward your ATP multi-engine pilot's license. I spent, probably a week, maybe 7 or 8 days there total between weekends and the weekdays, and got to fly in all the large sims, including 737s, CRJ, I think 200, a Airbus, I think 320. So I got to fly really some fantastic technology, and that was pretty cool. While I was there, however, I wound up starting to get a very sore back. We were sitting literally 12, 13 hours a day between classroom time and studying at night. Was just sitting constantly. And that backache continued to get worse and worse. Anyways, when I completed the ATP Jet School, passed the written FA exam, the knowledge exam for the ATP multi-engine, I moved on to St. Louis, Missouri, and that is where I started INDOC, or the indoctrination process. That was going to go on for about probably 3 months, where we're doing a lot of systems knowledge and basically working toward getting your ATP certificate for the CRJ 550. However, while I was there, the back issue became worse and worse, almost unbearable. And so after 4 days in INDOC, I decided I better get myself to the emergency room of a nearby hospital, which I did. And the emergency room doctor decided, well, we better do an emergency MRI on you. And it was determined I had sciatica of the back. He asked me, can I do my job standing up? Which I kind of laughed and said, I don't think that's going to happen based on being a pilot. And he goes, well, you really got to be standing a lot more. You can't be sitting. And so I wound up having a phone call with my chief pilot in St. Louis, told him what was going on, sent him some information about the doctor's report and recommendations. And the conclusion was between myself and our chief pilot was that, well, I probably should resign and come back when I'm healthy. And so I did. And that was 2 years ago. After about a month or two, the back started feeling better. However, I felt like I was really at a stage where at my time in my life that probably this wasn't for me. Also, the back issue was still a problem when I sat for longer periods, more than 3 or 4 hours at a time. So I felt like I really probably should no longer pursue that career path. And thus I decided to stay on and run the day-to-day operations at a flight school as their assistant chief pilot, and also fly a lot. And since that situation 2 years ago, I've been averaging over 400 hours a year flying, giving instruction and running the day-to-day operations of the flight school. And I've had a lot of fun doing it, and it's been a great experience. I will also say I've been able to help out some young pilots that are looking to go to the airlines, particularly the ones that actually have their CFIs or CFIIs and are nearing their magic 1,500 hours number, and help them prepare for the interview process. The interview process for going to these airlines is pretty rigorous. Some will require sim time, particularly the Part 135s won't require actually getting on a simulator. I had to fly a Frasca simulator the first time. That was like flying a piece of equipment from the 1970s or maybe 1950s, and it was frankly horrible, and I did horrible in it. But I did that and learned from that experience. I do think it's very essential at this stage in where we are in history that every person that's thinking about going to airlines gets some sim time, like a Redbird simulator, spend some time on that, shooting some approaches, going miss, flying some SIDS, flying some stars, because there's a good chance that you're going to be tasked to go to a simulator facility for one of these airlines or Part 135 hour operations, and as part of the interview process have to go through flying a simulator. Also, another thing with all of the airlines, they wanted Jeppesen plates. I had no previous experience with the Jeppesen plates, so I studied in advance for that. Also, I spent quite a bit of time making sure I was very solid on flying SIDS and stars. And for sure, during the interview process, spent a lot of time with questions like that. There was also some human resource questions, scenario-based questions. What if you went out to the plane, got into the cockpit, and your captain is sitting there looking inebriated or taking a shortcut in terms of a maintenance issue and going to try to fly anyways? How would you handle it? Things like that were some of the HR questions. Another set of questions that came up and that you really needed to prepare for was understanding turbine engines, jet engines, and how they operate. There's many different angles that you can get asked for questions, and it's important that you study well in advance everything you can generically about jet engines. But in addition, typically these airlines are going to send you a packet of information for you to study. Systems, for example, on the aircraft, as well as various approach plates and stuff. And basically you want to make sure you do all your homework on that type of material, because without a doubt, on every interview, questions came up specifically related to the packets of information they sent to us. So learned a lot from that experience, and I've been able to share that as kind of a consultant, if you will, with some of the CFIIs that are nearing their 1,500 hours in flight time. I also learned a few other things too when it comes to the cross-country hour logging. So a restricted ATP only requires 200 hours of cross-country flight time, but it has to be qualifying Part 121 cross-country flight time, or at least that's acceptable. So it's important to note that there's several different ways to log cross-country flight time. The most conservative way is you depart an airport, you go at least 50 nautical miles in a straight line to your destination airport, and that's considered a cross-country flight where you actually do a takeoff and a landing to each one of those. Under Part 121, it's a little bit looser. You can depart an airport, fly at least 50 nautical miles away, and you don't even have to land, and can come back. And I had many flights like that where I did approaches at an airport that was 49 nautical miles away, point to point, but we're flying approaches that took us several miles beyond that. So those were some hours that were qualifying Part 121. In the Part 135 world, they take point-to-point as cross-country. So you might have an airport at one location and 10 miles away of another airport, and you land there, and that's a point-to-point cross-country, and it's eligible for Part 135. So anyways, you need to think about that when you're building those cross-country flight hours in terms of maybe you want to log, make sure you do log those, let's say, aborted cross-country flights where you go at least 50 nautical miles away, but you didn't actually land at that airport. So that's my experience in the airline world. I actually got a check from GoJet Airlines for my 1 week of work there. So I kind of have that in the record books, if you will. I got to fly some fantastic simulators down in Irving, Texas. Got to meet a lot of great people. I will say the two guys that were part of our in-dock team for GoJets were very young. Both had gone to ATP school, and both were I was quite impressed with what I saw with the performance. One of them actually was my partner on the high performance sims that we were flying, and was very professional and did a very good job. So I was actually quite pleased to see what I saw coming out of ATP in that situation. So anyways, that's my story on getting to go to the airlines. Though ever brief, it was an incredibly wonderful experience. Fully enjoyed it. And for those out there that are middle-aged, that thinking that maybe is this a path that they want to go down, so they've already got some of the pilot ratings. It's definitely something you can do. I saw other older people at ATP Jet School when I was there, and I also know of other pilots that are older getting offers. So there's the opportunities out there. But that said, it requires a huge commitment, a lot of work, a lot of flying, a lot of studying, and you basically have to be willing to make a lot of sacrifices to make it happen. I was willing to do it. My wife was allowing me to have that opportunity, and I thank her for it. But just remember, it requires 110% effort, and you have to evaluate in your life at the stage where you are in life, is that what you really want to do? So anyways, that's my story for going to the airlines, and hopefully you got something out of it. As I said, I do some consulting work for flight students that are approaching their magic 1,500 hours in terms of basically doing mock interviews with them in preparation for their airline interview. So if you have any interest in that, I'll leave an email below, mark@falconimagery.com. You can reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to provide you with kind of mock interviews for these airlines. So anyways, hopefully it helps you, and if it does, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you get notified on my next video.